So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacture hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, there's a growing backlash against solar in the United States, especially at the federal level. There's been an effective cancellation of the Inflation Reduction Act. There's retraction of financial commitments that were made to ongoing solar projects and a lot of wind projects. Meanwhile, electric rates continue to skyrocket, and electricity demand, because of AI, because of EVs, heat pumps, it's going up tremendously fast, and it's inevitable that that's going up. This isn't just, an accident. It's not over projections. We're really going to see a huge demand for electricity. Solar is the most cost-effective way for us to generate electricity. We can get more solar, and that's really good public energy policy. It's going to reduce energy costs for everybody. We're avoiding the whole drill baby, drill brainwashing. And in a nutshell, we've got to change the trajectory of federal policies that are unfavorable to renewable energy. So I'm really excited about the tremendous opportunities for solar-friendly policies at the state level. We're lucky to have Sachu Constantine, who's the head of Vote Solar. And Vote Solar focuses on implementing favorable state-level policies. They work in 25 states to accelerate the transition to 100% clean energy for everyone. So Sachu's Vote Solar's executive director. He's a tireless advocate for policies that accelerate solar and storage deployment. I think the first time I met Sachu was when we were working on reducing permitting costs. There was a big effort on that, and we've really been successful with that. Sachu's been with Vote Solar for over 8 years, and prior to that, he worked for the Center for Sustainable Energy. He worked for SunPower and the CPUC. So welcome to the show, Sachu.
Thanks, Barry. Great to be here. This is as they say, an exciting time.
Yes. Exciting and interesting time. I think that's a Chinese proverb, but it's also a curse, so we'll have to deal with it. So people may not know that much about Vote Solar. So can you tell us a little bit more about the organization?
Absolutely. Happy to. And you did a good job in the introduction of speaking to the things that Vote Solar really focuses on. We've been a leading advocate for solar for over 20 years now, pushing that state-based policy and regulatory transition forward. We've been coming up with the policies that enable solutions to make solar more accessible, affordable, and reliable since 2001. And if you remember, in 2001, solar was a tiny fraction of the energy supply in this country, and it cost well north of $12 a watt. Now, and after things like the California Solar Initiative, which is where we first really came into contact when I was at the PUC, after that sort of jumpstart, which was one of Vote Solar's first major accomplishments, we've seen a steady decline in the price of solar through these state-based and state-level policies. We're down 70, 80% on the price per watt. We're seeing 60% more or more of the energy added to the grid coming from solar. And just in the last 2 or 3 years, 86 gigawatts of solar, avoiding 105 million tons of carbon pollution. And that's Vote Solar's real North Star. How are we going to get more solar on the grid, transition to a clean energy economy, and really drive carbon out of the grid supply and out of the economy?
Solar's obviously the cost has come down. The implementations, installations are going on almost on potentially every roof. But what to me is different and new is batteries. How have batteries become part of the solar message and in part of what Vote Solar is promoting?
Yeah, batteries are a key addition to solar. It's sort of the holy grail. We get solar. We get so much solar every day that we could, if we captured it all, we could power the global economy with just that one day. We could power it for a year. But there's no way we're going to capture all of that. And also it comes at a certain time of the day. It comes in the middle of the day, and we need it at night. The obvious problems. Batteries are the magic ingredient to help us shift that around. So solar plus batteries, the value proposition of solar plus batteries can start to really integrate with the grid. It can make that solar energy available when it's needed. It can provide other services to the grid now, including ramp functions. It can help with voltage control. It can help with all sorts of grid edge functions. And that's where we are. We're at a place where solar and storage is the most affordable, quickest to scale, most accomplished technology available out there.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing it here. We're just working in Silicon Valley, but 98% of the systems we put in have a battery. And many of our solar-only customers are now putting in batteries for a variety of reasons. It's just also to improve their reliability. But my only advice for you is don't change it to Vote batteries. It sounds kind of silly. Keep it as Vote solar. It's got a good ring to it. All right. So what are some of the big wins that Vote solar has racked up over the past few years?
Well, I mean, obviously, I mentioned the CSI, which was the Million Solar Roofs program in California. That is, as you note, pretty far back. Just in the last few years, though, you've seen in places like Illinois, we just passed the Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act. SURJA is the way people talk about it, and it's the successor bill or the follow-on bill to CEJA, which was the Clean Energy Jobs Act in Illinois, and that's really putting forward a strong vision of the future of clean energy in the state of Illinois. It doubles down on local solar and storage as a primary solution. In Minnesota, the Community Solar Garden program that is a key part of that state's effort to get carbon free by 2040 is going to deliver electricity savings to Minnesotans now, even as we transition to a better system in the future. And in Pennsylvania, we win things like rate cases against Philadelphia Gas Works that will ultimately not only save customers money now, but set the stage for future solar development by setting the right price signals out there for solar to be integrated into people's energy portfolio. Arizona has a bring your own device program. We've seen bring your own device programs all across the Midwest. Beyonce is the name of one that we worked on. Bring your own new clean energy, and I hope we get a chance to talk about how flexible interconnection and other kinds of policies can really help us meet the demands that are being placed on the grid.
Let's talk about that now. I mean, what is slowing things down? What are some of the most effective new policies that states can implement?
There's a couple that I would really highlight. One is, we're working with partners like Sun to get a new virtual power plant tariff model out there, spread and disseminated through all the states. This is a way for the electricity grid to capture all of the capacity of these distributed remote systems, kind of put them together in what we call a virtual power plant or a distributed power plant. And it can provide real capacity and real energy and real grid services and real resilience to the grid, to the utilities that are enabling them. So I think that's one, a really good VPP policy. I think another, we just talked about the flexible interconnection. We've got a huge new spike in load growth, in demand, coming from electrification, electric vehicles, data centers, and allowing those companies, these for-profit companies with lots to invest and lots of benefits to provide to the economy, to come and invest in clean energy, invest in their own source of energy or invest in shared sources of energy. That's a really important, not only way to get that volume out there, but to also integrate with the grid. Having flexible interconnection policies and allowing those data centers, for example, to come with their own supply and integrate that into the grid is a really great opportunity.
How is, and we're bouncing around here a little bit, but what is the reaction of investor-owned utilities when you've got a big, organization like a data center that has money, that has land, that wants to bring their own power, and then the utility says, well, we don't really need you, and we'll interconnect you in 8 years, and in the meantime, we're going to have power for you in 4 years, but it's going to cost a lot more. How are we going to resolve that issue?
Look, the IOUs and all utilities, public and investor-owned utilities, have a duty to serve load. And, sometimes I hear energy is only 20% of the GDP, but it's the first 20%. If you don't have that energy, you can't make the productive gears and wheels of the economy turn. And right now, for better or worse, data centers and the growth of AI is absolutely a cornerstone of economic growth. And these utilities really have to be able to provide that supply. And if they can't supply it, we're going to start seeing exotic solutions like recommissioned nuclear power plants and restarting old coal plants. And that's really not anything that anybody wants. The utility doesn't get anything good out of that. It's a pretty questionable proposition for these data center companies. So I think if we can align the incentives of the IOUs with the needs of these data centers, and what do they need? They need steady 24/7 power. They generally want it to be clean because their customers want them to be clean, and they want it to be pretty affordable. However much money they have, they're going to look for the best deals possible. So the IOUs are really in possession of the right signals to figure out creative ways to supply that load, to make sure that the jobs that those data centers are bringing, to make sure that the economic activity that those data centers are bringing, the tax revenue that they're bringing is available to the economy. I think them standing in the way that you're describing is not going to go over well with the public utility commissions in their state that want all of those things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that more. I hope we can kind of resolve some of those issues in California. But you mentioned that nobody wants these dirty coal plants or new nuclear plants, right? But I got to take one exception with that. There's this our president is brainwashing people with everything we're trying to do is the green new scam. How has Vote Solar managed to adapt to what I would say is less enthusiasm for renewables and more drill baby drill policies?
Well, I think first we have to talk about who has that enthusiasm and who has less. What we're seeing across the board, the public still supports solar. In some places, there are these disinformation campaigns that are eroding some of that support, but it remains a very popular idea for most consumers and even for most businesses. You do have interests aligned with the president's agenda who like that drill baby drill idea, but I think most people realize that is a dead end path to follow. So the president can continue to politicize all these solar solutions, but what do people care about? They care about affordability. It's a kitchen table issue. And, quite frankly, gas and coal and these other solutions are not the most affordable solutions, and they don't provide immediate relief, as we pointed out. Solar and storage as a bottom line is a more affordable, more scalable option, pairs very well with the larger grid resources that we also need to eventually meet the demand on the economy for energy.
I think we have to do as an industry a better job of overcoming the drill baby drill characterization that oil and gas and coal are the cheapest way to do things. And we really just have to get out there and say, these are the numbers. This is how much cheaper it is to drive your car. This is how much cheaper it is to heat your house with a heat pump. This is how much cheaper it is just simply to generate the kilowatt hours and get it to your house. So that's kind of been an issue. And it's something that from a political standpoint is going to just be a huge, huge messaging thing in the upcoming 2026 elections. Let's
Yeah,
come back.
I mean, you're absolutely right about that.
Let's come back to the latest hot topic. And there's just so many articles about the demands that AI will cause on the grid in terms of power and our inability to meet that. I mean, it's in almost every single clean energy newsletter that I look at. Everybody's talking about it. It's hitting the front pages of the newspapers. Let's kind of just backing up a little bit. When the data centers say we need 10 gigawatts of power in this part of the state, who pays for the electrical infrastructure build out for that power? How does the money flow for the utility to say, okay, we're going to go build a solar power plant, put in the transmission lines, put in distribution? Who pays for that?
Well, right now, the default under the 150 plus year old utility compact that we kind of operate under is the ratepayers. They have to pay for this. We socialize these costs across the grid, and we segment out parts of that cost, and it comes to you in the form of your energy bill. That's how the utilities would traditionally pay for it, and that's really not acceptable, right? For-profit companies, they can bring some of that investment and do it effectively for themselves as well as for the grid. The utilities can take advantage of cheaper resources and this customer demand. So growth should pay for growth, not families who are struggling with rising bills. And And I think the happy circumstance here is that we have a great solution in front of us that meets these needs. It's that local solar and storage, and you mentioned heat pumps and all of the distributed efficiency and demand response technologies that can all work in concert now. Um, and the kind of good feedback loop is that AI can enable more of that coordination, and really help us assign the costs to the right parties who are going to benefit from spending those costs, and uh, spread the benefits out across everybody in the rate base.
Yeah, we're not as an industry and as a society really getting those messages through us. So last year, remember PJM, which is the grid operator in the Mid-Atlantic states, said basically they did an auction and power prices, that wholesale power prices, they went up like 5 or 10 times. It was huge. My friends friends and relatives on the East Coast now are going to pay a lot more for electricity. They've now they're living our nightmare of high electricity costs. And then I think it was 2 weeks ago that PJM sent out a note saying they would not connect any more data centers unless they were confident that there would be that power for those data centers. So these data centers are all being planned. They bought the chips from NVIDIA. They're lining up the construction, but they're not going to be able to connect to the grid. What can we do from a political action standpoint to kind of pull all this together and essentially force the PUCs and force the data centers to kind of pay up front for this power? And my goal, and we've talked about this, is my goal is somehow to find a way for the data centers to actually pay commercial and residential customers to put in local solar that can go on the local distribution grid. And we don't have a 5 to 7 year wait for new gas turbines, and we don't have a 10-year wait for new interconnections. We can have a tremendous amount of parking lot power, rooftop power, solar power on homes. We can have a tremendous amount in 2 years. So what's it going to take?
Well, we have to continue some of the efforts that we already have, which is to get the utility commissions and the energy apparatus in these states to recognize that value that you're talking about, that parking lot solar paired with battery now 90% of the time, the rooftop solar, the community solar in impacted and underserved communities, again, paired with solar and with all those benefits. The PUCs can actually be the key to unlock the value of those systems. And collectively, here in California, for example, the millions of solar systems and the capacity of the batteries attached to them saved us during the heat wave this last summer, right? Came in and really just kept the system from peaking out. This is a real resource that's already out there, and PUCs can unlock that with the VPP tariffs, with better integrated resource planning. But there's another thing that you're alluding to, which I think is really, really fascinating. We all have a shared interest in getting steady, affordable, reliable, clean, and resilient energy on the grid. The data centers have a very acute need for that. And there's this opportunity for them to invest in those local resources that you mentioned, right? To instead of having to build their own power plant, make sure that every rooftop on the grid, on the circuits near them, every rooftop has solar, that there's maximized battery to the communities that need it, to the places on the grid that need it. That investment is much more effective for them ultimately than starting a new nuclear plant, right? And I think that speed and scale that you referred to, that's hugely important. We
So
know ultimately there has to be large scale solar, large scale wind, maybe add geothermal into that. That's all going to happen, but transmission planning takes a while, siting takes a while. We want to encourage all of that forward, but right now, today, tomorrow, a week from now, we can put solar on roofs, we can get boots on the ground, putting these resources out there on the grid.
yeah, money talks, and the data centers are, they're they're being used by Microsoft and Amazon and Apple, the biggest companies in the world. And they,
And Barry, they Google and some of these other companies have really creative solutions out there. They actually are doing that in the Southeast, for example, right? Where Google wants to build a lot of data centers. They are making sure that energy efficiency and solar and batteries are getting out into the community, and they're taking the capacity credit for that. And
yeah,
that's huge.
I'd like to see the data centers basically say, all right, we're going to put a feed-in tariff in place in this area, and they'll pay for the feed-in tariff. And that's going to basically have money going directly to the hosts of those systems, commercial customers, parking lots, homeowners. Now, are the PUCs in let's just say on the East Coast, are they a little bit more amenable to that kind of thing than the way the California CPUC has been over the past 6 years?
Well, unfortunately, some of the more regressive approaches that we've seen here in California spread across the country, right? They're pernicious, and Vote Solar looked to California as its lead, and the country has looked to California as its lead, and unfortunately, there's a danger of other PUCs in other states adopting uh, negative policies for solar. I would not argue that there's a uniform movement in that direction. As I mentioned, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan are all putting forward really good policies to engage with solar. In Georgia, the first Black woman elected statewide in Georgia was elected as an energy commissioner for the Georgia PSC. And she has a very clear renewable energy portfolio that she's bringing with her. And there were two commissioners, both new, defeating incumbents. There's a lot of pressure on these commissions to start to recognize the near-term benefits, the near-term affordability crisis that customers are facing. So I think that's to our advantage. PUCs operate on facts, and these are the facts.
Yeah, sometimes they don't always operate on facts. If you look at
Well, right.
the recent lawsuit,
That's fair, but they should, right?
that they should.
Operate on the record.
That's their job. That's the
Yep.
definition of their job. And unfortunately, in some cases, they probably just aren't really doing the job that we need them to do. You've done a terrific job. Your organization, CalSA, also, we're advocating at politically at the legislature, at the CPUC, things like that. We're doing a terrific job, but it's challenging. But I'd like to see the data center owners and operators like Microsoft and Google start saying, hey, we want to build a data center here. Here's $2 billion that we're going to throw at local solar hosts. How can we do that most effectively so that we have power in 3 years? I'd like to see that conversation. Here's the money's coming to the table.
Barry, maybe you're prescient, but I think they are having those discussions. There's some really talented, creative people working at places like Google. I know that because some of them are ex-Vote Solarians. They used to work for us, and they're there, and they are developing these solutions, right? Sometimes we're not going to see it in the public right away, but it's there. They're thinking about it. They're putting their creative energies to getting this power in a way that's going to benefit everybody. Ultimately, it's a bottom line question for them. This is probably one of the cheapest ways for them to get the capacity they need to reliably run these data centers. So it's happening, and we want to encourage that. I think working with those companies, Meta, Google, Microsoft, that's another way that we can start to advance this transition, not just through the expectations from the PUCs and PSCs, but through the self-interest of the very data centers that are creating the load spike.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the CPUC in our own backyard. What should they be doing to improve electricity affordability? And there's what they should be doing, but then are we going to have to wait until there's a new administration for them to actually start changing their spots, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, so California is looking down the road at a new governor, and we don't know what that agenda will be and how it will filter down to the PUC. So there's an opportunity there, right? Every opening like that is an opportunity. And look, whatever qualms I have about California policy, the California PUC is among the best staffed, most resourced PUCs in the country. There have been lately recent decisions that have really undermined rooftop solar, have been a bit myopic about the value of these resources, trying to talk about costs that really we know are outweighed by the benefits. Some light at the end of this tunnel is that the PUC does have active proceedings on a high DERS future. They have been working on how to assign capacity value to virtual power plants. We're not done, and there's a lot of work that we still need to do, but I think that suggests to me that the PUC is eyes wide open, starting to open up to these solutions. I'm talking to consumer advocates. I'm talking to energy justice communities, and we are collectively realizing that there are solutions that we can put in front of the PUC right now and hold them accountable to implement them. And that includes more distributed solar.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just kind of looking forward, what are some of the other opportunities that Vote Solar is really trying to turn on as far as electricity, solar, and batteries in the U.S.?
Well, I mentioned, I think one of our top priorities is that virtual power plant. What kind of and you mentioned a feed-in tariff. I think we're not, that might be one form of how it works. We have a very specific virtual power plant tariff, but I think unlocking that opportunity, getting more solar out there is the number one. And then getting the utilities accountable to use that energy with attached batteries. And those batteries can be on the customer premise, they can be in front of the meter on the utilities system grid, they can be at commercial sites, they can be spread where they're needed, and then powered by solar. So a VPP tariff is one. I think making sure that frontline communities either have access to the kind of financing that they need to put solar in, and that the installations that they put in can directly provide them with benefits. So community solar is another area that we're going to press on. All of that is going to be accomplished through the kind of modeling that we're seeing. So when you ask me, what do we need to do and what looks really good out there, we are seeing from folks like Grid Lab and E3 and others, finally a modeling recognition of the value of the dispatch of all of these resources. And then a third thing, which is really interesting to me, is this idea of plug-in solar. I think there's something out there. It demonstrates the idea that ultimately solar on your rooftop and a battery in your home is an appliance. It's a simple thing to hook up. And as long as we know, UL certification or other certifications, as long as we know that they're safe, these pieces of equipment can be installed in a day or two out there. And with the plug-in solar and the balcony solar, which Germany has been really going gung-ho on, that's a walk down to the store, buy it, walk back to your house and plug it in kind of a proposition. And that shows the way forward for the whole solar ecosystem.
Yeah, no, tremendous opportunities. Utah's already got a law that allows you to plug in solar. It's going like gangbusters in Germany. You got a lot of major companies like Enphase, EcoFlow, BrightSource that are starting to develop products. I kind of look at, I mean, we're purely in the rooftop business, but I kind of look at balcony solar and plug-in solar as a gateway drug to, for people with homes, because it's not that practical to plug in 20 solar panels with 10
Right.
different cords, but it works for apartments. But for homes, they're going to go with a normal rooftop solar system.
You're absolutely right. Plug-in solar it's an entry point, it's a gateway drug. I like that analogy. Because there are many people in this country for whom solar is not feasible. Maybe they live in an apartment, maybe they're in an area where the roof is shaded, but one part of the house isn't. Maybe they have really small load and there's just no economics there for them. These rooftop systems might be too much for some of them, but the plug-in can really, really work. And then once we've shown that people can take this resource, this thermonuclear plant that's several
92 million miles away.
right, and powering all of the lights and stoves and heat pumps in our homes, well, then we get more urgency around making the rooftop solar system also streamlined. We've got to drive costs out of that value proposition. We got to get permitting down. That's something, Barry, you've been a champion for that for years. And yes, we've made progress, but we still have very high costs of finance, very high costs of customer acquisition, and very, very long delays and costs associated with permitting and interconnection.
Yeah, no, that's the story of my life going into the end of the year where everybody wants their systems in. And it's just kind of crazy. Balcony solar and plug-in solar is kind of a typical example of how much faster technology is evolving and costs are coming down for batteries, particularly for also solar panels, compared to the rate at which the policies can keep up with those new technologies. So, Utah passed a law last year. Hopefully, and someday soon there'll be a law in California that's going to enable that kind of plug-in solar. And we need that law, but the technology is already there in Germany, and we just have to kind of push the policy making faster and push our legislators and policymakers to really do the right thing for customers and get that power onto the grid as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the European electrical system with its higher voltages and um, other aspects of that grid make it a little bit easier. There are some safety concerns, 15 amp circuits, with old wiring might be a problem. That's why we can bring in UL and other sort of certifiers. We can put power electronics in these systems. We can come up with creative ideas like small, little, very affordable batteries that are also attached to these balcony plug-in solar arrays. And I think those same principles will start to apply to larger systems as well.
Yeah.
So there are still some issues to work out, but I think the Utah legislation, if we can replicate that in places like New Jersey and New York and California, as you say, we can really, really overcome that lag time between policy and technology by simply flooding the market with viable products.
Yeah. I mean,
There was a
another
year
example.
probably when nobody had a microwave, and then the next year everybody had a microwave, right?
Yeah, well,
That's what we're looking.
Yeah, another example is there's ovens and stoves that are coming out with lithium-ion batteries inside, and they just plug into a 120-volt circuit, and they kind of trickle charge all day. And then, when you need power, you've got a ton. And Carrier announced that they're looking at putting a battery in their outdoor compressor units for heat pumps and AC. And, once again, it's going to be real, it's running, but then how does the policy allow Carrier or an HVAC company to kind of put that in? It's going to take a little while. I know the answer is going to be no from the utilities until we kind of work out the right policies there.
It's kind of like with your health insurance claims. They're going to say no the first 3 times that you ask, so you got to ask the 4th time, because then you're going to get the claim that you want. And I think that's what we're seeing. Certainly not irrational behavior on their part, but the solutions are so viable, so affordable, so scalable. It's going to be hard for them to continue to resist.
Yeah. All right, good. Is there anything else you want to discuss? Because I do want to ask about some of your worst or best dad jokes.
I was hoping we could fill the time so you wouldn't get to the dad jokes. I'm not the dad joke master. Adam was the dad joke master. I do have one. It's been my only dad joke for 50 odd years, or well, nearly 50 years. So guy goes into a doctor's office. He says to the doctor, you got to help me. I work in a stressful job, and I get a stabbing pain every time I try to drink my coffee in the morning, and I need that coffee to operate. And the doctor says, did you try taking the spoon out of the cup?
All right. All right. I don't know if we can survive another bad dad joke. So let's just kind of transition. How did you get into the solar business?
2007, when the California Solar Initiative really kicked off. It was like a moonshot, right? It was like the Apollo program. Really high potential to shift the market. And I had just moved back to California from DC. In DC, I'd been working on global development around clean energy, energy efficiency, appliance standards. So I was already touching on the energy space. In fact, we were also pushing the leapfrog opportunity for solar in rural parts of Africa, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya. And so this moonshot really just pulled me in. It was an opportunity too good to pass up, to go work at the PUC at the center of this massive incentive and deployment program. I think that's what really brought me straight into solar. And I think since then it's just captured my imagination. It has so many benefits to spread out. It's hard to ever say we're done, because there's still more to do to get those benefits out there.
Well, it's great. Like you and like me, I really am passionate about it. We know we're doing the right thing. We can figure out how to make a living out of it. We can really, really help people, and it's our legacy kind of going forward. So it's a good place to work, and I love it. And I got lots of employees who are really, really happy to do the same thing and making their lives with solar and batteries.
It's one of those things where the people who work in the space see the benefits, enjoy the whole ecosystem that we operate in, and can become evangelists. And that's actually something that I didn't mention, Barry, that I probably should. one of the greatest strengths that we have are the people that already have solar out there and already have solar and batteries. There is power in those communities when you have Solar United neighbors mobilizing all of that. When Vote Solar gets its social media platforms and gets people to realize, hey, you've got solar, they're trying to pull the ladder up behind you. Don't let them do that. We can get people out there on the steps of the PUC, and that's fun, right? We're part of a movement. We always want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Adam, my predecessor, Adam Browning, used to say that a lot, and it's really true. We want to be part of a movement. We want to be doing something positive. That is core to human nature.
Yeah, and yeah, you got the Solar Rights Alliance, and you mentioned it's just it really, really makes a difference when you just see so many passionate people saying, "Hey, I'm saving money. This was the right thing," and it flows through everybody who's touching that system, from the installer to the salesperson to the homeowner that's got it to the manufacturers, and the people like you and sometimes like me advocating for the right policies.
Have you ever seen a heat map of the spread of solar? You can see it. You get over time, you get a little point of somebody, some innovator putting in solar or storage or buying an electric vehicle. And from each of those points, the solar grows and it spreads across the system, because neighbor to neighbor, community to community, block by block, that's how it spreads.
It's
They
contagious.
have it, they like it, I want it.
Yep, it really works. Okay, how can people get in touch with you at Vote Solar?
You can look up my LinkedIn page. That's one way. We have all of our work is available and really valuable, I think, for folks in this space at votesolar.org. We have email newsletters, and that's a good way to not only get feedback but give back to the organization. Look me up is
Yep.
the basic answer. We're happy to work with whoever we can to push this agenda forward.
Yeah, and what's the URL for Vote Solar?
www.votesolar, all one word, .org.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, that's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks, Sachu, for joining me. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always go to our website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's Energy Show.